For centuries, one ancient book terrified religious authorities. It spoke of angels who fell from the heavens, of forbidden knowledge given to humanity, and of a judgment so severe that even the watchers of the sky would not escape it. This book was quoted by early Christians, preserved by ancient Jews, and respected by the first followers of Jesus. Yet today it is missing from the Bible. Why was the Book of Enoch removed? Who decided it did not belong? And what truths did it contain that made it too dangerous to keep? Tonight, we uncover the real history of the Book of Enoch. Not legend, not fantasy, but documented evidence from ancient manuscripts, early churches, and lost civilizations. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Whispers of the World. This is not a story the church likes to discuss. This is the Book of Enoch. Long before the Bible existed in its modern form, before churches, councils, and religious institutions, there lived a mysterious figure whose story would echo through thousands of years of human history. His name was Enoch. Enoch is one of the most enigmatic characters in ancient scripture. Unlike kings, prophets, or warriors, Enoch is described as a man who never died. According to the Book of Genesis, Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more, because God took him. This single sentence, short and cryptic, has puzzled scholars, theologians, and historians for centuries. Who was Enoch? Why was he taken? And what knowledge did he possess that later generations tried to suppress? To understand the Book of Enoch, we must first understand the world Enoch came from. The antediluvian world. Enoch lived in what ancient texts describe as the antediluvian era, the time before the Great Flood. This was a world radically different from ours according to ancient tradition, a world where humans lived extraordinarily long lives, where divine beings interacted with humanity, and where knowledge was not yet restricted by institutions or doctrines. The genealogy in Genesis places Enoch as the seventh generation from Adam. In ancient numerology, the number 7 symbolized completeness and divine order. This positioning was not accidental. Enoch was not a king. He was not a ruler. He was not a priest. He was described simply as a righteous man who walked with God. But what does that actually mean? Walked with God, a dangerous phrase. In ancient Hebrew tradition, the phrase walked with God implies direct communion, not prayer, not worship from a distance, but ongoing, conscious interaction. This already sets Enoch apart. Other biblical figures prayed to God. Moses spoke to God briefly, prophets received visions, but Enoch walked with God. This distinction becomes critical when we examine the Book of Enoch itself. The missing writings. The Bible tells us almost nothing about Enoch, and yet ancient Jewish tradition insists that Enoch wrote extensive revelations about heaven, angels, cosmic judgment, and the structure of the universe. These writings were not invented in the Middle Ages. Fragments of the Book of Enoch were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, dating back over 2,000 years. This proves that the Book of Enoch existed long before Christianity and was preserved by Jewish communities who considered it sacred. This alone challenges the common belief that Enoch was never important. Enoch in early Christianity. Here is a fact rarely mentioned in modern churches. The New Testament directly quotes the Book of Enoch. In the Epistle of Jude, one of the earliest Christian texts, the author writes, Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all. This passage is word for word from the Book of Enoch. This means early Christians knew the Book of Enoch, read the Book of Enoch, considered it authoritative enough to quote in Scripture. So how did it disappear? A book too honest. The Book of Enoch describes events that challenge later theological structures. It speaks openly about angels who rebelled, forbidden knowledge taught to humans, heavenly hierarchies not controlled by priesthoods, direct divine judgment without intermediaries. In other words, it presents a world where humans are not dependent on religious institutions to understand divine truth. This made it dangerous. The Watchers, introduced early. Even in its earliest sections, the Book of Enoch introduces a group called the Watchers, angelic beings tasked with observing humanity. But these beings did more than observe. They interfered. They taught humans astronomy, metallurgy, weapon-making, medicine, cosmetics, writing knowledge that ancient societies later credited as the foundations of civilization. This raises an uncomfortable question. If this knowledge came from fallen angels, then where did civilization really begin? Why this matters today. The Book of Enoch forces us to confront a version of history that is not neat, not sanitized, and not easily controlled. It suggests human knowledge was accelerated unnaturally. Spiritual beings interacted directly with humanity. Judgment was not symbolic, but literal. These ideas were acceptable in ancient times, but deeply problematic once religious authority became centralized. The first step toward removal. The Book of Enoch was not banned overnight. It was gradually questioned, marginalized, excluded from official canon lists. By the 4th century, when church councils began defining the biblical canon, Enoch was considered too controversial, not false, not disproven, just inconvenient. Enoch was a man who walked with God and returned with knowledge humanity was not ready to control. His writings survived floods, empires, and censorship. But the question remains, if the Book of Enoch was once sacred, if it was quoted by the Bible itself, then why was it removed? In the next chapter, we will uncover the Watchers, their descent to earth, and the forbidden pact that changed human history forever. Long before organized religion, before churches, doctrines, and councils, ancient cultures across the world shared a strikingly similar belief. Beings from the heavens once descended to earth. They were not gods in the way later mythology would describe them. They were watchers, observers, guardians, and messengers assigned to oversee humanity's development. The Book of Enoch gives these beings a name, the Watchers. And according to Enoch, their greatest crime was not rebellion through war, but interference through knowledge. Who were the Watchers? In the Book of Enoch, the Watchers are described as a class of angels assigned to observe humanity and maintain cosmic order. Their role was passive, not active. They were not meant to rule, teach, or interfere. They were meant only to watch. The Hebrew term associated with them, Irim, appears in ancient texts meaning those who are awake or those who observe. This suggests a state of constant awareness, guardians who never slept, never turned away. But something changed. The descent to earth. According to Enoch, 200 watchers descended to earth during the days before the Great Flood. Their leader was a being named Semjaza, who made a dangerous proposal. The watchers saw human women. They desired them, and they feared one thing above all, punishment, if they acted alone. So Semjaza proposed a pact. Each watcher would swear an oath together, binding themselves collectively so none could turn back. This oath was taken on Mount Hermon, a real geographical location in the ancient Near East. The name Hermon itself is believed by scholars to be connected to the word herem, meaning ban or curse. In other words, the place of their oath became known as the Mountain of the Curse, the first forbidden union. The Watchers took human wives. This act violated what the Book of Enoch describes as the law of heaven, the separation between spiritual beings and humanity. From these unions, children were born. They were not ordinary humans. They were called the Nephilim. The Nephilim, giants of the ancient world. The Nephilim are described as beings of enormous size and strength, but their true danger was not their physical power. It was their appetite. According to Enoch, they consumed human resources, they enslaved populations, they turned against humanity itself. When food ran out, the Nephilim began consuming animals, and then humans. Violence filled the earth. Bloodshed became constant. This detail is critical because it reframes the Great Flood not as a random punishment, but as a containment event. Forbidden knowledge given to humanity. But the Watchers' greatest crime was not creating the Nephilim. It was what they taught humans. Each Watcher revealed specific forms of knowledge. Azazel taught humans how to make weapons, shields, and armor. He also taught the art of cosmetics, jewelry, and deception. Barakel taught astrology. Kokabel taught the constellations. Arakiel taught signs of the earth. Shamsiel taught the course of the sun. Sariel taught lunar cycles. This knowledge was not neutral. It accelerated civilization faster than humanity was prepared for. War became more deadly, power became centralized, social inequality intensified. Enoch describes this knowledge as forbidden, not because it was false, but because it was premature. A pattern across civilizations. What makes the Watcher's story remarkable is how closely it aligns with myths from entirely separate cultures. In Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki are described as gods who descended from the heavens and taught humanity arts and sciences. In Greek mythology, Prometheus steals fire from the gods and gives it to humans, an act punished severely. In Mesoamerican traditions, Quetzalcoatl is a civilizing figure who brings knowledge and then departs. Different names, different cultures, the same story. Beings from above, knowledge given too soon, punishment that follows. Heaven's response. According to the Book of Enoch, the corruption became so severe that the cries of humanity reached the highest heavens. 4 archangels are named as witnesses: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel. They report what they see. And for the first time, heaven intervenes directly. God commands, the Nephilim must be destroyed, the Watchers must be bound, the earth must be cleansed, but judgment would not be immediate. First, there would be imprisonment. The binding of the Watchers. The Archangel Raphael is commanded to bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into a desert place of sharp stones. Other Watchers are imprisoned beneath the earth, sealed in darkness, to await final judgment. This imagery, angels bound underground, appears nowhere else with such detail, and it introduces an unsettling idea. Some beings from ancient texts were not destroyed. They were contained. The flood as containment. Only after the Watchers are bound does the plan for the flood emerge. The flood is not presented as punishment alone, but as reset, a cleansing, a way to erase the influence of the Nephilim and the corrupted bloodlines they created. Noah, according to Enoch, is chosen because his lineage is described as pure, uncontaminated by watcher interference. This detail does not appear in the standard Bible narrative. Why this chapter was dangerous. This part of the Book of Enoch created a theological problem. It suggested evil was not solely human knowledge itself could be dangerous. Angels could fall without Satan's leadership. Heaven was not immune to rebellion. These ideas undermined simplified doctrines that developed later. So the Watchers were erased from mainstream teaching. Their story was labelled symbolic or ignored. The legacy of the Watchers. Even today, the word Watchers appears in apocalyptic literature, intelligence agencies, and modern myth. Why? Because the idea of unseen observers never left human consciousness. The Book of Enoch may not be in the Bible, but its influence is everywhere. The Watchers descended not to rule, but to interfere. They gave humanity the tools of civilization and the weapons of destruction. And for that, they were bound beneath the earth, waiting. In the next chapter, we follow Enoch himself as he journeys beyond the earth into the heavens and witnesses secrets no human was meant to see. After the fall of the Watchers and the corruption of the earth, the Book of Enoch shifts its focus away from humanity and towards something far more unsettling. A human being invited beyond the limits of the earth. Enoch does not discover heaven through imagination, ritual, or death. He is taken. And what he sees there challenges later religious ideas about the universe, the afterlife, and humanity's place within creation. The calling of Enoch. According to the Book of Enoch, Enoch is summoned by heavenly messengers while still alive. These beings are not described as gentle or symbolic. They are powerful, radiant, and terrifying. Enoch is lifted from the earth and carried upward. This is not a dream. It is not a metaphor. The text repeatedly emphasizes that Enoch is awake and aware. Ancient readers would have understood this as a literal journey. The first heaven, the border of the world. Enoch first passes through regions that resemble the earth but are altered, distorted reflections of the physical world. He sees storehouses of wind, chambers of clouds, treasuries of snow and hail. In the ancient worldview, natural forces were not random. They were managed. This challenges modern assumptions that ancient people saw nature as chaotic. Instead, Enoch describes a universe governed by structure and order, the second heaven, the place of punishment. Enoch is shown a terrifying region where fallen angels are held. These beings are bound, weeping, aware of their coming judgment. This is not yet hell, as later theology would define it. It is a detention place, temporary, controlled, and supervised. The message is clear. Judgment is organized, not impulsive. The third heaven, paradise. Here, Enoch sees what he describes as the garden of righteousness. This is where the souls of the faithful are kept, separated from the corrupt. The tree of life stands at its center. This description predates later Christian concepts of heaven and paradise, suggesting those ideas evolved from earlier sources like Enoch. The fourth heaven, the cosmic order. In this realm, Enoch witnesses the movement of celestial bodies. He learns the paths of the sun and moon, the cycles of seasons, the balance that keeps the world stable. Angels are assigned to ensure these movements remain exact. This is not mythology alone. It reflects an early attempt to understand astronomy through divine order. Importantly, this knowledge was once considered forbidden. The fifth heaven, the grieving watchers. Enoch encounters fallen watchers who are aware of their fate. They ask Enoch to intercede on their behalf. This is a shocking detail. Angels pleading with a human. Enoch writes their petition, but is later told their judgment is sealed. This establishes a hierarchy where humans are morally accountable in ways angels are not. The sixth heaven, the archangels. Here Enoch meets the highest-ranking angels, beings of immense power who maintain cosmic law. They are not emotional, they are not worship-seeking, they are administrators of divine order. This portrayal removes mysticism and replaces it with structure. Heaven in Enoch's account functions more like a cosmic system than a spiritual fantasy. The seventh heaven, the throne of God. At the highest level, Enoch sees the throne of God described not in human terms, but through light, fire, and energy. God is not given a physical form. Instead, Enoch emphasizes radiance, authority, presence beyond description. This avoids idolatry and reinforces a concept of divinity beyond human control. Knowledge too dangerous to keep. Throughout his journey, Enoch is repeatedly warned, not all knowledge is meant to be shared. This directly contradicts later ideas that all truth must be taught openly. In Enoch's worldview, knowledge carries responsibility, timing matters, misuse leads to destruction. This mirrors the story of the Watchers, knowledge given to early causes collapse. Why this threatened religious authority? If Enoch's account were accepted fully, it would mean heaven operates independently of churches. Humans can receive knowledge without priests. Divine justice is universal, not institutional. These ideas weaken centralized control, so Enoch's cosmic revelations were gradually removed from public teaching. Scientific echoes. Modern readers often notice something strange. Enoch's layered heavens resemble later scientific concepts: atmospheric layers, planetary motion, cosmic order. While not scientific by modern standards, the structure suggests observation, not fantasy. Enoch's transformation. By the end of his journey, Enoch is no longer simply human. He is transformed into a scribe of heaven, tasked with recording judgment and knowledge. In later Jewish mysticism, Enoch becomes Metatron, the highest angel. This evolution of Enoch's role is another reason the text became controversial. Enoch did not ascend to escape death. He ascended to witness order, judgment, and responsibility. What he saw would later shape religious ideas, even after his book was removed. In the next chapter, we uncover the prophecies of judgment, the coming flood, and why humanity itself was placed on trial. As Enoch's journey through the heavens reaches its most solemn phase, the focus of the Book of Enoch turns toward a single unavoidable reality: judgment. Not symbolic judgment, not moral storytelling, but a calculated response to a world that had moved beyond repair. According to Enoch, the flood was not sudden anger. It was the final step in a long process of observation, warning, and containment. A world beyond corruption. The Book of Enoch paints a grim picture of the pre-flood earth. Human society had collapsed under the weight of violence and inequality. The Nephilim ruled over cities and territories. Bloodshed was constant, and justice no longer existed. Even the natural world was affected. Animals became aggressive. The land was described as crying out. Balance was broken. In Enoch's worldview, corruption is not only moral, it is cosmic. When order is disrupted on earth, it echoes through the heavens. Humanity on trial. One of the most striking aspects of the Book of Enoch is that humanity is not the only one judged. Judgment is multi-layered. The Watchers are judged for interference. The Nephilim are judged for violence. Humans are judged for embracing corruption. This removes the idea of humanity as the sole source of evil. Instead, Enoch presents a system where every being is accountable. The role of Enoch as witness. Enoch is not a judge, he is a witness. He records what he sees, hears, and is instructed to write. This is why the Book of Enoch reads like a legal document at times, detailed, procedural, and unemotional. Judgment is not driven by anger. It is driven by evidence. The prophecy of the flood. Unlike the Bible, which introduces Noah abruptly, the Book of Enoch frames the flood as an outcome that had been anticipated for generations. Warnings were given, time was allowed, change was possible, but humanity did not turn back. The flood was not meant to punish righteousness. It was meant to preserve it. Noah, chosen, not random. The Book of Enoch gives additional context to Noah's selection. Noah is described as righteous, obedient, genetically untainted by watcher influence. This detail is controversial because it suggests corruption was not only behavioral, but biological. This idea would later be removed from mainstream teaching. The flood as a reset, not an ending. Enoch describes the flood not as destruction, but as containment and reset. The goal was to remove the Nephilim, break corrupted bloodlines, restore balance to the earth. Life was preserved through Noah, but knowledge was restricted. After the flood, direct interaction between heavenly beings and humans ceases. The age of open contact ends. Angels bound, knowledge sealed. The watchers remain imprisoned beneath the earth, awaiting final judgment. Their knowledge is sealed. Humans are left to rediscover science, culture, and civilization slowly, through trial, error, and time. This explains why ancient civilizations appear suddenly advanced, followed by collapse. Knowledge rises, then disappears. Why this terrified later institutions? If accepted literally, the Book of Enoch implies human history is cyclical. Civilization has been reset before knowledge can be lost intentionally. This undermines linear progress narratives and centralized authority. Institutions prefer stability. Enoch describes fragility. Moral responsibility. After the flood, after the reset, humanity is given a second chance, but with limitations. No more watchers, no more divine teachers, no shortcuts. Progress must now come from within humanity itself. This places enormous responsibility on humans, not angels, not gods, not institutions. Parallels. Across cultures, flood myths exist worldwide. Mesopotamia, India, Mesoamerica, China. The Book of Enoch provides a unifying explanation, a global reset remembered differently across cultures. The silence that followed. After the flood, Enoch disappears from human history. His book survives, but barely. What remains are fragments, translations, and echoes. The silence that followed was intentional. The flood was not the end of humanity. It was the end of interference. A boundary was drawn between heaven and earth, one that would not be crossed again. In the next chapter, we explore how the Book of Enoch survived, how it was preserved, and how it slowly vanished from official scripture. After the flood, after judgment, and after the sealing of forbidden knowledge, the Book of Enoch should have disappeared forever. And for a time, it almost did. Yet against all odds, this ancient text survived, not because it was protected by powerful institutions, but because it was quietly preserved at the edges of history. This chapter traces how the Book of Enoch moved from widespread respect to near erasure, and finally to rediscovery. Enoch in early Jewish tradition. In the centuries before Christianity, the Book of Enoch was well known among Jewish communities. It was not fringe literature. Fragments of the Book of Enoch were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls stored by the Essenes, a Jewish sect known for strict discipline, apocalyptic beliefs, and deep distrust of centralized religious authority. This is critical. The Essenes preserved texts they believed reflected true divine knowledge, even if it conflicted with emerging religious power structures. The presence of Enoch among these scrolls proves the book existed before Christianity. It was copied and respected. It was read by scholars, not outsiders. Quoted but not protected. As previously noted, the New Testament book of Jude directly quotes the Book of Enoch. This means early Christians accepted it as authoritative enough to reference publicly. However, something strange happens after this period. While Enoch is quoted, it is not defended. It is used, but not preserved. The rise of canon authority. As Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, a major problem emerged. Different regions used different scriptures. Some churches read Enoch. Some rejected it. Some ignored it. This diversity became unacceptable once Christianity aligned with imperial power. Uniformity was needed. The canonization process. Between the 3rd and 4th centuries, church leaders began compiling official lists of acceptable scripture. Their criteria included apostolic authorship, consistency with emerging doctrine, liturgical usefulness. The Book of Enoch failed not because it was proven false, but because it did not fit these criteria. It was attributed to an ancient patriarch, not an apostle, filled with angels, cosmic systems, and judgments. Difficult to control doctrinally, so it was excluded, not banned publicly, not condemned universally, simply left out. Why hidden is more accurate than banned. Contrary to popular belief, the church did not hold a dramatic vote to ban Enoch. Instead, it was removed from public reading, omitted from official lists, gradually forgotten. Silence replaced suppression. This method was far more effective. The Ethiopian exception. While Enoch disappeared from most of the world, one tradition refused to let it go. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserved the Book of Enoch as part of its biblical canon. For centuries, Ethiopia became the only place where the complete text survived. This preservation was not accidental. Ethiopian Christianity developed independently. Before Roman canon decisions were enforced, they never removed Enoch. They never forgot it. Rediscovery by the modern world. In the 18th century, European scholars travelling in Ethiopia encountered a text they believed was lost forever, the Book of Enoch. It was translated from Ge'ez into European languages, shocking theologians and historians alike. For the first time, the world could read what had been missing, and it matched ancient fragments perfectly. The Dead Sea Scrolls confirmation. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in the 20th century, fragments of Enoch confirmed its authenticity. This ended debates about whether it was a medieval invention. It was ancient, very ancient. Why it still isn't in the Bible. Even after rediscovery, the Book of Enoch was not restored to the biblical canon. Why? Because canon decisions are rarely reversed. Admitting Enoch would raise uncomfortable questions about angels, about knowledge, about judgment, about control. The cost was too high. Enoch's quiet influence. Despite its exclusion, Enoch influenced Christian angelology, demonology, apocalyptic literature, concepts of heaven and hell. Its ideas survived. even when its name did not. The Book of Enoch was not destroyed. It was hidden in plain sight, preserved by those outside power, until the world was ready to read it again. In the next chapter, we examine what the Book of Enoch says about the end of the world and why its prophecies still unsettle modern readers. As the Book of Enoch approaches its final and most unsettling themes, the focus shifts away from the distant past and moves uncomfortably close to the future. The text becomes prophetic, not in the vague language of symbols alone, but through structured warnings, timelines, and moral consequences. Unlike later apocalyptic writings designed to inspire fear, the Book of Enoch presents the end times as a logical conclusion to a repeating human pattern. Prophecy as observation. One of the most misunderstood aspects of the Book of Enoch is its concept of prophecy. Enoch does not predict the future as a fortune teller. He observes patterns, corruption, rise of power, loss of justice, collapse. The future is not random. It is the result of human choices. This makes Enoch's prophecies deeply unsettling because they place responsibility back onto humanity. The judgment of kings and the powerful. A central theme of Enoch's prophecies is the judgment of rulers. Kings, judges, and wealthy elites are repeatedly condemned. Why? Because knowledge was hoarded. Justice was sold. The poor were ignored. Enoch's warnings are not mystical. They are political and social. Power without accountability leads to collapse. This alone made the text dangerous. The fate of the Watchers. Enoch describes a final judgment where the imprisoned Watchers will be brought forth. Their sentence is irreversible. This reinforces a key message. Forgiveness exists, but accountability cannot be escaped. Even celestial beings face consequence. The Son of Man. Figure one of the most controversial elements of the Book of Enoch is the introduction of a figure known as the Son of Man. This figure executes judgment, upholds righteousness, restores balance. This concept predates Christianity and later became central to Christian theology, which raises an uncomfortable question. Did later doctrines borrow from Enoch? A divided humanity. Enoch divides humanity into two paths. Those who pursue righteousness, those who pursue power. There is no neutral ground. This binary worldview later appears in many religious traditions. The end of corruption, not the world. Importantly, Enoch does not describe the end of the planet. He describes the end of corruption. The earth is restored. Balance returns. This makes Enoch less about destruction and more about renewal. Why these prophecies were silenced. Enoch's end times vision threatens any system built on injustice. It promises judgment beyond human courts. It warns that power structures are temporary. For institutions seeking permanence, this message was unacceptable. Modern relevance. Many readers today recognize parallels. Concentrated power, technological acceleration, moral confusion, environmental imbalance. Enoch's warnings feel less ancient and more immediate. The Book of Enoch does not predict doom, it predicts consequence. And it reminds us that judgment begins long before the end arrives. In the next chapter, we explore why the church ultimately rejected Enoch and whether it was ever truly meant to be forgotten. By the time Christianity became an organized institution, the fate of the Book of Enoch was already sealed. Not because it was unknown, not because it was disproven, but because it was too complete. It answered questions that institutions preferred to control. Enoch was too old to control. The Book of Enoch predates Christianity. This alone created a problem. Church authority depended on apostolic succession, teachings passed down from Jesus through the apostles. Enoch did not belong to that chain. Its authority came from antiquity, not hierarchy. That made it uncontrollable. Angels without Satan. Enoch presents fallen angels without placing Satan at the center. This contradicts later doctrines that required a single adversary figure to explain evil. If angels could fall on their own, then obedience was not guaranteed. This weakened simplified moral frameworks. Knowledge as the real danger. In Enoch, knowledge, not disobedience, is the root of corruption. This challenged institutions that position themselves as gatekeepers of truth. If knowledge itself could be dangerous, who decides when it is revealed? Enoch answers, divine timing, not human authority. Direct access to the divine. Enoch receives revelation without priests, without temples, without intermediaries. This undermines the necessity of centralized religious control. Judgment beyond institutions. Enoch's judgment bypasses churches entirely. It judges kings, judges, religious leaders. No one is protected by position. That made it deeply threatening. Canon was about unity, not truth. Alone canon decisions were political. Uniform beliefs stabilized empires. Enoch complicated that unity, so it was excluded quietly. Hidden, not destroyed. Destroying Enoch would have raised questions. Ignoring it solved the problem. Silence became the weapon. The Book of Enoch wasn't rejected because it was false. It was rejected because it was uncontrollable. In the final chapter, we ask the most important question of all. Was the world ever meant to forget the Book of Enoch? The final question surrounding the Book of Enoch is not whether it was removed from the Bible. That fact is clear. The deeper question is why it survived at all. Because books truly meant to disappear rarely leave fragments, quotations, and echoes behind. The Book of Enoch did not vanish. It waited. Survival against all odds. For nearly 2,000 years, the Book of Enoch existed in shadows. It survived. Religious reform, imperial canonization, language extinction, cultural collapse. This was not accidental. Texts without meaning are forgotten. Texts with power are preserved, even secretly. Knowledge for the right time. One of the most overlooked themes of Enoch is timing. Knowledge is not denied forever. It is delayed. Enoch himself is instructed to seal parts of his writing until a future generation is ready. This suggests the book was never meant for every age, only for the right one. Why it speaks today. Modern readers live in a world eerily similar to Enoch's warnings: rapid technological advancement, moral confusion, concentrated power, loss of accountability. Enoch feels relevant because the conditions have returned, not anti-faith, anti-corruption. The Book of Enoch does not reject God, it rejects corruption. It does not attack belief, it attacks abuse of authority. This distinction is crucial. The Ethiopian choice. The Ethiopian church never removed Enoch. They did not fear it. They trusted readers to approach it responsibly. This decision preserved the text and its integrity. Enoch's final message. Enoch does not ask to be worshipped. He does not demand belief. He records. And in recording, he leaves humanity with a warning. Power corrupts when knowledge is misused. Judgment is universal. And silence does not erase truth. The book was hidden, not lost. Hidden texts are not meant to disappear, they are meant to resurface. The Book of Enoch returned when humanity regained access to information beyond institutions. This may be why it unsettles so many. What you do with it now. The Book of Enoch does not command action, it invites reflection. What matters is not whether it is canonical, but whether its warnings are understood. The Book of Enoch was not erased. It was set aside, not because it was false, but because it revealed too much, too soon. And now, centuries later, it waits for those willing to listen.